Good morning, children. Today we are going to start off with our first lesson in prose, Unit 1, His First Flight. And the author is Liam O'Flaherty. Some important points. In other words, synopsis, which means a brief summary of the lesson. The first is the author, Liam O'Flaherty, in the lesson, His First Flight, gives us an account of a young seagull who at first was afraid to fly. Why? Due to lack of confidence. But later he gathered courage and began soaring, flying right up in the sky, backed up by his family. His first flight is a parable. A parable is a simple story with a moral. The seagulls convey the message of self-confidence, motivation, and self-reliance. The mother seagull motivates the young one enough to get him to learn flying. The young seagull realizes the importance of belief and faith. Finally, he pleases his family by flying upwards and diving here and there. He flaps his wings to learn flying and gain the confidence to be independent. The story conveys, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. It means if you give a man a fish, you can only feed him for a day and he has to depend upon you for that fish. But if you teach a man to fish, he doesn't have to depend upon you anymore. Whenever he is hungry, he can go and fish and get his food. The parable also stresses the importance of family ties and devoted support. In the lesson, you will see how the family tried to encourage him. First, they were teasing him, scolding him, and at last they were encouraging him, and they were so happy when he started to fly. It tells us about the painful process of learning an important lesson in life. Finally, hard work with confidence always meets with success. Now we will start reading the lesson, and while I am reading the lesson, I will explain it to you. Now children, I am going to take the lesson, His First Flight, paragraph by paragraph, and explain it to you. The young seagull was alone on his ledge. That means he was standing alone. Ledge is on a narrow horizontal surface projecting from a wall. So he was alone on that ledge. His two brothers and his sister. So he had two brothers and only one sister. Had already flown away the day before. That means his two brothers and his sister left him and they have flown away the previous day. He had been afraid to fly with them. Somehow, when he had taken a little run forward to the brink of the ledge and attempted to flap his wings, he became afraid. Somehow he thought he can fly. So when he went to the brink of the ledge, that is the top of the ledge, and attempted to flap his wings, he became afraid. The great expanse of sea stretched down beneath, and it was such a long way down, miles down. Okay, so when he saw the vast stretch of sea stretched down beneath him, he got afraid. So he said, it's bad jobs trying to fly, and he went back to his ledge. He felt certain that his wings would never support him. So he bent his head and ran away back to the little hole under the ledge where he slept at night. So he went back to the little hole and slept the whole night alone. Why? Because his father and mother, brothers and sisters had left him and flown away. Even when each of his brothers and his little sister, whose wings were far shorter than his own, ran to the brink, flapped their wings, and flew away, he failed to muster up courage to take that plunge which appeared to him so desperate. That means, so though his brothers and sisters, they gathered up courage and they started to fly. Their wings were shorter than his. But he got afraid and he stayed back. His father and mother had come around calling to him shrilly. So his father and mother came to him and were shouting, yelling in a loud voice, asking him to start flying, asking him to try to fly. They were scolding him, threatening that he'll have to starve on his ledge unless he flew away. But for the life of him, he could not move. But for the sake of saving his life, he did not want to take the risk of flying. That was 24 hours ago. Since then, nobody had come near him. The day before, all day long, he had watched his parents flying about with his brothers and sisters, perfecting them in the art of flight, teaching them how to skim the waves and how to dive for fish. He had, in fact, seen his older brother catch his first herring and devour it, standing on a rock, while his parents circled around, raising a proud cackle. And all the morning, the whole family had walked about on the big plateau midway down the opposite of the cliff, laughing at his cowardice. So all the more, he watched his parents and his brothers and sisters on the other part. From his place, he could see his brothers and sister and his mother and father, how they were perfecting them in the heart of flight, and how they were teaching him how to skim the waves and how to dive and catch fish. And his older brother caught his first herring and devoured it, standing on a rock, while his parents circled around him, raising a proud cackle. That means they were praising him and laughing loudly. And all the morning, the whole family had walked about on the big plateau midway down the opposite cliff, laughing at his cowardice. So they're all making fun of him. We are enjoying life here while you're all alone. Unless you fly, you can come and join us. Otherwise, you'll have to be there all alone without any food. The sun was now ascending the sky, blazing warmly on his ledge that faced the south. He felt the heat because he had not eaten since the previous nightfall. Then he had found a dried piece of mackerel's tail at the far end of his ledge. Now there was not a single scrap of food left. He had searched every inch, rooting among the rough, dirt-caked straw nest where he and his brothers and sister had been hatched. He even gnawed at the dried pieces of eggshell. It was like eating a part of himself. Now children, in the para, his parents were on the other side of the plateau making fun of him for not trying to fly. The sun was rising in the sky and he could feel the heat of the sun because he had not eaten the last night. However, he was able to find a dried piece of mackerel. A mackerel is another kind of fish. There was nothing else for him to chew but dried pieces of eggshell. He then trotted back and forth from one end of the ledge to the other, his long grey legs stepping daintily, trying to find some means of reaching his parents without having to fly. But On each side of him, the ledge ended in a sheer fall of precipice with the sea beneath. And between him and his parents, there was a deep, wide crack. Children, he then started walking slowly to and fro on the ledge, trying to find some way to reach his parents without flying. But he couldn't, as the ledge ended in a steep side with the sea beneath him. And between him and his parents, there was a deep and wide space. Surely he could reach them without flying if he could only move northwards along the cliff face. But then, on what could he walk? There was no ledge, and he was not a fly. And above him, he could see nothing. The precipice was sheer, and the top of it was, perhaps, farther away than the sea beneath him. He stepped slowly out to the brink of the ledge, and standing on one leg, with the other leg hidden under his wing, he closed one eye, then the other, and pretended to be falling asleep. Still, they took no notice of him. He saw his two brothers and his sister lying on the plateau, dozing, with their heads sunk into their necks. His father was preening the feathers on his white back. Only his mother was looking at him. He was still hoping to find some means of reaching his parents, but concluded that it was dangerous and impossible. He, however, tried an act to show that he had fallen asleep, but that did not have any effect, as they were not bothered. He saw his brothers and sister dozing, and his father cleaning his feathers. Only his mother was looking at him anxiously. A mother is a mother. So she was looking at him anxiously, thinking when he will come to their side. She was standing on a little high hump on the plateau, her white breast thrust forward. Now and again, she tore a piece of fish that lay at her feet and then scraped each side of her beak on the rock. The sight of the food maddened him. How he loved to tear food that way, scraping his beak now and again to wet it. He uttered a low cackle. His mother cackled too and looked at him. Children, he saw his mother tearing a piece of fish on a little high hump on the plateau. A white breast thrust forward, and he was longing for it. The very sight of the food made him desperate. He gave a cry to beckon to her, and she reciprocated. She gave back the same cry, much as to say, if you want the fish, you try to fly. Ga, 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 he cried, begging her to bring him over some food. Call, ooh, la, she screamed back mockingly. But he kept call plaintively, and after a minute or so, he uttered a joyful scream. His mother had picked up a piece of fish and was flying across to him with it. He leaned out eagerly, tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer to her as she flew across. But when she was just opposite to him, abreast of the ledge, she halted, her legs hanging limp, her wings motionless, the piece of fish in her beak almost within the reach of his beak. Children, what did she do? He was uttering a cry much as to beg his mother and ask her, please come and give me food, please come and give me food. Finally, she came with a piece of fish in her beak and stood motionless before him. She, however, did not come too close to him. he had to reach out. His mother was just tempting him so that he will come forward and then he will slip and naturally he will have to fly. He waited a moment in surprise, wondering why she did not come nearer. And then, maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish. With a loud scream, he fell outwards and downwards into space. His mother had swooped upwards. As he passed beneath her, he heard the switch of her wings. Then a monstrous terror seized him, and his heart stood still. He could hear nothing, but it only lasted a moment. The next moment, he felt his wings spread outwards. The wind rushed against his breast feathers, then under his stomach and against his wings. He could feel the tips of the wings cutting through the air. He was not falling headlong now. He was soaring gradually downwards and outwards. He was no longer afraid. He just felt a bit dizzy. Then he flapped his wings once and he soared upwards. His mother came close to him, tempting to give him the fish. But as he approached her, she flew up higher. He was thrown into the air. He was motionless for a time, and finally he picked up courage and found that he was able to soar up into the air. He was no longer afraid. He was just a bit dizzy. Then he flapped his wings once again and he soared upwards. Now he understood that he was able to fly. He uttered a joyous scream and flapped them again. He soared higher. He raised his breast and banged against the wind. Ga, 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 Goluksh. His mother swooped past him, her wings making a loud noise. He answered her with another scream. Then his father flew over him screaming. Then he saw his two brothers and sister flying around him, soaring and diving. Just as he reached out, as I told you, and his mother played a game on him, teaching him how to fly. So he started to fly. He felt himself going downwards at a great speed. He was very much frightened and began to flap his wings to save himself. This act of his taught him to soar upwards bravely. He was no more afraid of flying. Finally, he heard his mother, his father, his brothers and sister flying around him, soaring and diving. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly and commenced to dive and soar, shrieking shrilly. He was near the sea now, flying straight over it, facing out over the ocean. He saw a vast green sea beneath him with little bridges moving over it. He turned his beak sideways and crowed amusedly. His parents and his brothers and sisters had landed on this green floor in front of him. They were beckoning to him, calling shrilly. He dropped his legs to stand on the green sea. His legs sank into it. He screamed with fright and attempted to rise again, flapping his wings. But he was tired and weak with hunger, and he could not rise, exhausted by the strange exercise. His feet sank into the green sea, and then his belly touched it, and he sank no further. He was floating on it, and around him his family was screaming, praising him, and their beaks were offering him scraps of dogfish. He had made his first flight. He uttered a joyous scream and was soaring, circling, and diving, followed by his parents, brothers, and sisters who were very happy and who had pieces of dogfish in their mouth. Finally, they were so happy that their brother was able to fly. he saw them on the green sea. He too landed on the green sea. In the beginning, he was scared, but finally he realized that he was able to float and skim the waves like them. In fact, he was doing a better job than them. Now we realize that he was able to fly and skim the waves like his brothers and sisters and parents, and was very happy that he had overcome his fear. So, children, the moral of the story says, trial costs nothing. Sincerity meets with success. So, this is a lesson for you also. So, unless you try, and then only you can succeed. Work hard and you will succeed in your studies. Okay, children, we have come to the end of the lesson is first flight. As I already told you, you strive hard and you will meet with success. So I'll meet you in the next lesson. It may be poetry or supplementary. Thank you.